It's a pleasure to open the 2018 Dialogue on Business and Human Rights, which is now in its 5th year. And it's also a pleasure to have the opportunity to discuss with you the important steps the Australian Government is taking in partnership with business, industry and civil society to combat modern slavery. After visiting Cambodia in 2016, I was horrified to learn of the scale of slavery within the orphanage tourism industry. It was particularly shocking to me to realise that well-meaning but terribly misguided Australians were actually doing great harm to the children they thought they were assisting. Since then, through engagement with Walk Free and Save the Children, I came to understand the extent that modern slavery practices were embedded in Australian products and services and through our global supply chains. Modern slavery encompasses a range of crimes: human trafficking, slavery and slavery-like practices including servitude, forced labour and forced marriage. These practices are a scourge and an indictment on us all. Each of these are serious exploitative practices, and they're also grave violations of human rights that have no place anywhere in today's world. These practices are also a denial of the most fundamental personal democratic freedoms. But today slavery rarely manifests itself as physical shackles and chains. Instead, they're invisible shackles. They're exercised through subtle forms of coercion and threats, both on the individuals and their families. The United Nations International Labour Organization estimates that there are over 40 million people around the world today caught up in modern slavery. Of the victims, about 25 million are exploited in our supply chains, and about 15 million are in forced marriage. Slavery is an incredibly lucrative crime. Slavery generates every year $190 billion. $190 billion annually. That's more profit than Apple, Exxon, Chevron, Microsoft and Facebook earn combined. Sadly, our own region is the global epicenter for modern slavery, with about 2/3 of the known victims in our Asia Pacific region. This is why the Australian Government has decided to take concerted action. I was honoured to participate in the Parliament's comprehensive inquiry into modern slavery that we called Hidden in Plain Sight. Hidden in plain sight because not only is it in our supply chains, it's also here in Australia. And I'm thrilled now to be the Minister responsible for taking this legislation through the Parliament. But these are not steps alone that government can take. And as a politician, I was encouraged by the commitment and drive that I saw and I experienced right across the Australian community. I'm proud that with the passage of this bill next month, Australia will become the first nation globally to recognise orphanage trafficking as a form of modern slavery. This is a brilliant example of what we still can achieve when we all work together with a common aim. The Modern Slavery Act will set a clear standard for action which will help Australia deliver tangible results in combating exploitative practices in the business supply chain. But I think it also demonstrates Australia's commitment to being a regional leader and a determined global partner in countering modern slavery. The annual reporting requirement will require over 3,000 of Australia's largest organisations to publish annual modern slavery statements. And in a world first, the Australian Federal Government will also publish a statement of these risks in government procurement. The statements must be signed by a director and approved by a board to ensure that modern slavery risks are considered at the highest levels within the largest organisations in Australia. And where an organisation finds slavery in their supply chains, as we expect many, if not most, will, then the government will be there to support them to take action to address the slavery wherever they find it. And to coordinate and support our approach, we're establishing a $3.6 million expert business engagement unit within the Department of Home Affairs to provide advice to businesses and other organisations on how to comply with the Modern Slavery Act. We expect And I'm hopeful that this will drive behavioural change in organisations and what I refer to as a race to the top, as investors, consumers and shareholders reward businesses for taking this action. Your dialogue today is a key forum for building networks and information sharing on best practices here and overseas in the promotion of human rights in business operations. I encourage you all to actively participate in an open discussion and share insights and learnings on modern slavery risk assessment and modern slavery risk management. Each and every one of us here in Australia are in part responsible for the rise of slavery, and I think we've all got a moral obligation to address it. So I commend the UN Global Compact Network Australia and also the Australian Human Rights Commission for continuing to build momentum on modern slavery reporting and also human rights risk management more broadly. Thank you and have a great conference.